control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you. With you. And I still trip over my feet. And my heart's still scared.
Ignition sequence start.
I'm such a lucky guy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride as once again we are broadcasting live off this great planet we like to call Earth. Good to have you with us as we're live right here in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the Great White North on this Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning if you're on the East Coast. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. If everyone's listening in on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio, I'm so thankful that you are all here. Remember, we do this thing every night of the week, and if we rock in and out of every single show, thanks to our resident guitar god, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Yes, Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. Hey, you can also follow us on social media on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we'd like to say hello to everyone listening in our regular chat rooms. And if you want to take part, we don't usually take phone calls on this show, so if you do want to hang out with us and our listeners, you got to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio chat room, and on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, do me a favor, use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio, and I will get to your questions and comments there as well. If you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet on our website, it is time. It's $5 a month. With that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. While on our website, read up on my latest blog. Check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, head to the website, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Mike Schmidt is ready to take your information. We want to thank everyone listening in on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, go over to freedomslips.com and donate today. If you've listened to this show for a number of times, or maybe it's your first, you'll know Sasquatch is one of my favorite topics because there are so many theories as to what it is. Actually, we don't know what's lurking in the forest shadows. From British Columbia all the way across continent to Florida and around the globe, people ordinary people wandering for fun in the wilderness have made contact with this elusive creature, yet for decades after decades of reports, we still cannot confirm the existence of this great hairy beast. So what is it? Is it Gigantopithecus? Is it a relative of the great apes of Africa? No one seems to know because we've never been able to track down much of the much-needed body for science to confirm what kind of creature it truly is. Now, others out there venture out on a limb and believe Bigfoot is just a little bit more than a humanoid-type animal. They believe there's something special about Sasquatch that many researchers are overlooking. And that's where Samantha Ritchie comes in. Ever since moving to the mountains of Washington State, Sam has had some amazing and intriguing encounters that she has documented. It's changed her entire perspective on what's really out there in the forest. And we're going to learn about those tonight. Sam's website is planetsasquatch.wordpress.com. Sam, welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you along for the full 3 hours. How are you?
Pretty good, Dave. Really good.
I'm glad to have you as well, because I love talking Sasquatch. And, you know, there are so many different theories and aspects to what this creature is. We're going to get into all of it tonight because we have a lot of information to cover. What brought you into the field of Sasquatch? What made you so intrigued that you had to learn absolutely as much as you can?
Well, I think it wasn't a case of, oh, this is an interesting subject. I think I'm just going to become a researcher and start pounding the pavement and start looking for this creature. And unfortunately, it seems to be the way a lot of people do it. For me, it was unexpected, actually, because of the fact that I've been. The story actually goes back. I'm going to spend maybe a few minutes on this because it's important. But there is a connection, the Sasquatch, and it gets a bit into the paranormal a little bit, but it also involves a connection. So, I'm originally from the state of Kentucky, but I had a real appreciation for nature. And when I was a kid, we had a huge section of woods behind our house, so I'd go back there and I would rake trails and actually spend a lot of time kind of connecting with nature. And so as time went by, there was a situation when I was 13 where I had a near-death experience. So I was in the hospital for 2 months with some really serious illness where my temperature basically jumped up to 107 degrees. And I was having delusions. I didn't necessarily see a white light, but I saw I was having some kind of weird connections and things like that. And after I got out of the hospital, I did survive that. And I was 13 years old when that took place. But ever since that point, I was having some kind of connections with things. And you often hear that story often with people that have the near-death experience that from that time forward in their life, they have some paranormal connections at that point. So life goes on, and eventually I had gone back and forth between the state of Washington. I first moved out here from Kentucky when I was 19 years old after I got out of high school. And I really love the Cascade Mountains in the Mount Rainier area. If anybody's seen this, it's on like one of the 7 wonders of the world to see Mount Rainier. You can see it anywhere on a clear day, basically. So, but unfortunately, because of job situations or whatever, and marriages, I went through 2 of them, and I had, 3 kids, and over a period from the 70s through the 80s. And I eventually had to move back east for a short period of time, 13 years. And but I always had that connection, thinking about living back in the Northwest, because I felt that special connection with the mountains out here. So my opportunity came to finally come back here in 2002. Found a house out here in the Tacoma area, and moved my spouse, Toby, and my family back out here. And so as time went by, I So I basically, I wouldn't call it luck, but I was able to secure. I was basically one of the key people that helped found a garage operation that turned into a $1 billion business, and a $1 billion business out of North Carolina. And so being the key programmer at the time, I was able to telecommute basically. So living in Washington State, I was still able to work with them. And so I would take drives out towards closer to the mountains than from Tacoma, right on the foothills of the Cascades, and would work from there. The situation came up at some point in time where I had a very critical time from 2007 and into the next 3 years. My spouse was diagnosed with cancer, a terminal cancer. And there was a lot of going back and forth between, we eventually had to go to Mexico and for some unconventional treatment, and buying a house on the other side of the Texas side of the border, and then having to resell it and go to North Carolina for conventional treatment. It was just a big mess. But ultimately, after 3 years, Toby did die of cancer. So I was devastated, basically. And I was up here in the state of Washington, and those drives that I took out towards the foothills extended from that. I need to drive in further. So eventually I came to this place called Greenwater, which was actually embedded into the Cascades. And so I started making like regular rounds there until eventually secured an RV. Where a rental, basically, I found an RV that I could purchase, and found a rental of the lot where I could actually leave it there. So even though I had this nice, beautiful house in Tacoma, I was more than happy to spend time out into the mountain area and just kind of connect with nature a lot closer. There's something about that area. It was the energy. There's something that was pulling me there. And I didn't know what it was exactly, but it was part of that connection I was having. And because I was having other kinds of what you would term psychic type of things going on, such as synchronicities that have to do with numbers, for instance. I was seeing numbers all over the place of the same sequence, especially the number 44. And 444. Every time I turned around, it was 44 past the hour, or the license plate had 444 on it, or I'd wake up at 444, and it was basically driving me insane because there must have been something to that. So while I was in Greenwater, this kind of just extends into at that point in time. Let's talk about Bigfoot here for a second. At that point in time, I did not have what I felt that the Bigfoot was nothing more than, I felt that it was nothing more than a myth. I loved the Harry and the Hendersons movie that came out. I thought it was a great fictional movie, but other than what I've heard from the past and in the 70s, I do remember the Patterson Gimlin clip of Patty, and also some footprints, but I was given the impression that it was a hoax, and I think that was just mainstream media just kind of, at that time, downplaying anything any legitimacy to that, So with that in mind, I actually went into the general store there one day, and I met this gal named Barb Shoop, who happened to be working there. And I looked down into the glass counter that was there, and I was noticing these gigantic footprints cast in plaster. And I said, "What's this all about?" And he says, "Well, these are replica casts of some of the Bigfoots that were, that they took castings from. It wasn't Patty, it was just some other ones, but they were large. They were like 13 inches long." And so I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, are these real? I said, yes. And then she proceeded to tell me that she had brought those in there, and that recently she was out, I think it was 8 months earlier, 6 to 8 months earlier, that she was just up the hill from Greenwater up on the mountain there, because it kind of sits between two rivers, and there's a huge hill called the Huckleberry Mountain. And she was up there with her dog, and they were, Gabby is his name, and she was just looking, and all of a sudden these elk were running by, and she'd noticed this group of elk running, and then all of a sudden there was this hairy being that was kind of running with them or chasing after them. And her first reaction that she told me was, there's no apes in Washington State. And then it occurred to her that it was actually for her first sighting of an actual adult Bigfoot that was running after the elk. So that's just really. And so, and she started doing YouTube videos, and so at that point in time, I says, well, this is really interesting. I says, I probably like to go out with you sometimes on your walks in the woods and look into this a little bit more, but life was getting in the way, so I didn't have. And this is probably about 3.5 years ago. Well, about that time, I was in my RV, and it was right behind the tavern. There's a section of woods that drops down into the river, and then across and basically it just goes into the wild there. And we started hearing some howls coming from just inside the woods, and some of them sounded like an owl. And some people would claim that they were owl, but they were so deep, unless the owl was about 600 pounds. It was a very loud noise. We started hearing it come from the woods, and so that was the first occasion where we were kind of communicating back and forth with this, whatever was in the woods, and it would kind of go back and forth between one side of the property to the other, and it was really intriguing. And so at some point later on, we trying to think of this. What happened was, I think that was one summer, and then a little bit later we came back to the tavern, and I heard that same noise again, and there's some outbuildings out behind there, and I said, Last time I didn't try to go into the woods. I decided I had one of those LED flashlights with me, so I said, I think I'm going to walk between these two buildings, and I'm just going to check this out. So all I was hearing was this very call, this singular call that sounded like an owl. But it was a very deep call, and it was very, very tripping me out. So I went between the two buildings, and as I got in there, and I took the flashlight and shined it in the trees there, and all of a sudden, I had a spatter of 5 different, it sounded like 5 different beings doing monkey chatter, screams at me. They just screaming at the top of their lungs. As I was shining the lights up, and it just scared the you-know-what out of me. And so I wasn't about to turn my back on the in the darkness of the woods to get back out of there. I held the light towards them as I slowly backed out into the main area of the parking lot. And it was catching the attention of 3 people that happened to be working at were on break. And so I told them what was going on, and says, there's something in the woods here. So they went and had a flashlight too, and they went back, and we started, I guess no better terms is we were chasing the sound that was going from, something was moving about, going from tree to tree, and was going across the backside of the woods there along the edge of the property. And we followed it along and went way in back of the parking lot where my RV was at the time. and we tried to shine the light up there, and we heard it up there. And it started moving its way back across the tree again, into the woods behind the outbuildings again. And at some point it stopped, and I had a sense that it was right above us. So I says, quick, shine the light straight up into this tree. And way up near the top of this tree, we looked, and there was this, what I can best describe as a grayish ball, a black ball of hair. And it's immediately lunged from one tree to the next over about a 20 feet space. So that was basically my first sighting of what I don't consider to be an adult Sasquatch, but rather a juvenile that just happened to be up there. There were probably some others up there, but that was the one we noticed. And then they pulled the flashlight away. So at that point, I decided to break it off. But the other three, they basically were chasing this thing all the way down the trees, down the street, and they figured it was about 5 different beings as well, that are entities or whatever it is that they were chasing. So anyway, I'm not trying to run out of gas or anything. But
No. Let me ask you this, Samantha. Did you
Sure.
believe in Sasquatch before any of this? Because let's face it, I know with me, before I had my sighting, I believed that Sasquatch was out there somewhere. It just seemed way too real, too many sightings, Patterson Gimlin film. There were so many variables for me where I had decided that I had believed in the creature. What was your understanding of what Sasquatch was before you actually had this encounter?
Well, I didn't. First of all, I didn't believe they existed because I never had a personal experience with them, and but I was also know when someone's not lying to me, and like Barb, she telling me that she was seeing, she saw that up there, and I says, well, I had to rethink. Well, see, the thing is, I think the thing that helped me accept it a lot better was the fact I was already having a lot of weird type of synchronicity issues. There were things, from very strange things that were happening, not just paranormal, but also, it's hard to describe, but in other words, it really shaked up my reality. So this was just one more extension of something that was just going to pull me out from my belief system that I probably needed to be exposed to. So when that happened, when I saw that, and I said, I was just kind of like unbelievable. And it really got my interest up at that point because I finally saw something. You see. So and then even down, I eventually bought some property myself, which was across the main highway down below near the other river. And so I moved my RV down there, and I built a fire pit. And one night I went out there to start the fire, and I came back into the RV for a short couple of minutes to take care of something. And it was already dropping toward evening. It was already starting to get dark. And I came back out from the RV, and all of a sudden I heard something start like running. And because the woods was there, the woods was just on the other side of my short street there, and it was screaming. So I saw it running, and it was screaming at the top of its lungs, a young one. So obviously it was one of the small juvenile or kids, the Sasquatch kids that were kind of playing around by my fire, and got spoofed when I walked out. So it took off in the woods. So that was another experience. So things just kind of snowballed from that point forward. With my involvement. One part was taking walks along the little section of woods. I started doing that along the what we call the White River down there, and I was taking note of trees, that were out of place and things like that, about tree branches or limbs, because I was hearing from Barb about things about structures that they would do. So one day I was walking down, and I just happened to put a kind of like created a little gifting site where I just leave some, like some dessert or something, on a rock, and then I did a triangular diagram there with in the ground with a rock on it as a symbol, and just to see what would happen. And I came back out sometime later, and right next to that wasn't there before. There was this tree, and it was at least, I would say, 9 to 10 inches in diameter, that was leaning against a tree out of nowhere. It was this big, huge log that I couldn't even move off of the tree, that it was leaning against a tree that I couldn't even move. The strange part about this log was the heavier bottom part of the log was leaning against the upper part of the tree, whereas the top part of the log was slammed in the ground at least 12 inches. Had no idea where in the world this came from. It just blew my mind. So that is just some of the things that I had documented that happened. And so as time went on, it was really stoking my interest to become more involved. And Barb was, I started accompanying her on her side of the Greenwater, where she usually goes up into the trail that's near her. And so we started going up there. And I started becoming more involved with the camp out. So she started sponsoring what they call a garb. She has a YouTube site called Barb and Gabby, and so she started sponsoring these campouts that would encourage people that are basically fans of her YouTube channel, if they wanted to come and for about 5 days and come and camp out. They would get together, a small group of people, about 10 to 12 people. And they could basically camp with Barb and Gabby, and then they could take them out to the different spots where they've had sightings or had experiences. So I decided, well, I need to come and camp out myself, and so I participated. I finally started participating in their second camp out, and it was about the time it was September 11th of 2014 at that point, that we were walking up the trail behind the trail that we normally go up, that she usually goes up. And she was going to show us a break in a tree, which basically had no other explanation why it was just snapped. It wasn't snapped completely off. It was snapped and then snapped in two different places, but it was still partially attached, So as we were walked up there and we were noticing it, she had her iPod on, so she was recording this and then talking about it. And then all of a sudden there was this kind of noise being made, and she looks up, and then you could hear her on the video. She goes, "Oh my God, I just saw something black and very large drop down and then take off." And so we didn't know what it was. It was and then by the time I heard something, and by the time I looked, it was already gone. So didn't think anything of it until we went back to the campsite. And so she had a chance to take it out, the video that she had taken that was kind of pointed in that direction. She was able to transfer it to a tablet where the screen was a little bit bigger. So we're sitting around by the campfire, and Barb's basically looking at this, and then the next thing you know, all I'm hearing is, "Oh my God, oh my God." And so we didn't know what the heck was going on, so we walked. So, "What's wrong, Barb?" Says, "Oh no, I I can't believe this. This is science fiction. This, you know, she's having a hard time. I said, well, what is it? So she played the video, and from what we could tell, it was just like a scene out of the movie Predator. There was sitting on top of the branch. As you watched the video, you could see something very translucent, and then it drops down, swings around, and takes off, but it's very translucent, and you could see right through it. It was the most shocking video, and we all looked at it over and over again. Finally, we went to another person's RV that had a giant big screen for their computer and loaded it on there and watched it from there. So we couldn't figure out what it was. It was just so remarkable that she finally put it on YouTube. And it ended up getting a huge number of hits, actually. If anybody can go on YouTube and do cloaking Bigfoot, it's the first thing comes up, Barb and Gabby's video, and they can watch it for themselves. So that was the first thing that really happened. That was really, over the top. And so, I'm trying to think of the next thing. Oh, so that morning, I was starting to feel very, I don't know the feeling. I was feeling very tranquil about things, and I said, "Oh my goodness!" First I've had these experiences with what was out in the woods, and then down by the RV. And then we're seeing this now. It says, what else could there be? And the one thing that I was wanted to do was I really wanted to have an experience with Sasquatch. I really wanted one to walk up. And one of the things that I picked up on in my brief time was the fact that recording equipment was something they didn't like. So if you wanted an experience, the recording equipment was going to kind of keep them away a little bit, like a recorder or a camera or video. So I decided I'm going to leave everything in the car. I just want to go up this trail again by myself. I'm going to go up in this area again, and I want to have an experience with the Sasquatch. I didn't know what was going to happen. Something was going to walk up to me. I had this feeling come across me that something great was going to happen. And so I go up this trail, and I'm by myself, and I get to the area just past the part where we saw this cloaking Bigfoot. And we go to this kind of a meadowy type of area where I walk through the trail. I'm slowly going up this trail through this meadowy area, and all of a sudden the wind starts picking up. And it's a little strange because there was no wind down below, but all of a sudden it's very breezy right in this one little spot. And as I'm walking through there, I'm starting to have this euphoric feeling, like just something overcoming me with like joy. It had nothing to do with fear whatsoever. And I just started feeling great. And I was saying, hello, trees, and hello, Bigfoot, Sasquatch out, just basically greeting everything and any and everything that was out in the woods. And so I walked through this valley, and then I turned around and said, I'm going to just start heading back slowly. I'm just kind of taking a slow pace. So the sun happens to be also shining through this little area, so it was kind of, there's a creek that's just on the right side of the trail. And I'm looking, and I'm walking, and I'm seeing this light. I'm seeing the sunlight come down, and it's reflecting off something very bright, kind of very orange reflection. And I'm thinking, is there a piece of metal down there or something that's just right off the trail about 15 feet? And as I'm walking closer, I'm getting closer to it, I finally come to the shocking realization that what I thought was reflecting metal was not that at all. It was a beam of light. Matter of fact, it wasn't just one beam of light. It was 4 beams of light that were suspended above the ground, 3 feet, and they basically look like something right out of Star Wars. They're kind of like a lightsaber light, you know. And they were in a pattern like forming a triangular box with the ends kind of like shaped like Z's, like the letter Z. And there were 4 of these things that formed this box, and it was glowing orange light. And so I'm seeing this, and I have absolutely no fear. But on the same token, I'm not going to step closer to this thing because I don't want to go to some place. I don't know what's going to happen getting close. I'm thinking portal or whatever. But, in my state of being, I'm thinking, wow, you don't see this every day. And I'm just kind of laughing a little bit seeing this thing, and I don't want to keep my eyes off of it either because it was remarkable. So I'm just slowly looking at this thing, and I'm about no more than 15 feet away from it. And as I'm walking past it and going down the trail, I keep my eyes fixed on it because it's like glowing, it's pulsating. And I did move my eyes off for 1 second, and then when I turned back around, now I'm seeing what appears to be a beach ball size orb that is floating towards the 4 beams of light. My best description would be kind of looked like a gigantic soap bubble. It's translucent. It had a very electrical, like sparking quality around the perimeter of it. It was moving slowly towards the end of the 4 lights. And I'm watching this thing, and it floats in, and then it goes in between the 4 lights into it, basically. And then it starts to pulse 2 or 3 times, and then as it's doing it, it starts to fade and then disappears. And this all happens in about a 45-second period of time. Unbelievable.
Wow.
I was just blown away. I says, first of all, it's just like, I was expecting to see Bigfoot, and all of a sudden I got something more than it leaves me speechless even today.
I have to tell you this. I know there is a lot of people out there who will not believe anything to do with the cloaking of Bigfoot. And I want to go back to that for a moment here.
Sure.
Okay, but I've seen that. And I have met very, very few, and when I say few on this show, I mean very few people who have had Bigfoot encounters who have actually seen the cloaking. And while you were talking about it, I went onto YouTube. I Googled or I YouTubed in the search bar cloaking Bigfoot, and you were right. The video with Barb and Gabby comes up right first, and it's right by the tree. And I'm looking at this, and I absolutely started getting goosebumps because 5 days after I had my own personal Bigfoot experience, I saw that exact same thing when I felt like we were being followed. And there were 4 of us. And only 2 of the 4 of us actually saw the cloaking, or what I like to call the pixelation of what this looked like. So this has just absolutely blown me away because I've never seen this on camera before.
Right. As a matter of fact, it was it caused such a stir. How many hits does it show that it's had so far on YouTube? Oh, you
right
probably
now,
don't have it still pulled up.
Yeah, I do have it pulled up. It's 89,817.
Okay, yeah. And the only other video that she has more hits on is the one where she had a webcam down near property where you can actually see the photo bend, and you can see the hair of the Bigfoot on the side of the photo. But that's her second most popular video. And we've had multiple people actually trying to analyze the video and slow it down to see what it was. and some had speculated it being a alien or a mantis being, or but I did an analysis video myself on my channel, and from slowing it down, you can actually see a Bigfoot with a young one on top of it. It hunches down. You could see when it whips around, you could see it's actually a young one on its shoulders as it's whipping around and taking off. But the point was, it blended in with the background so well that it looked like part of the background. So whatever the color that it had was emanating the same color as the background or in front of it.
So people, what has been the people's reaction to seeing this? Do they believe it's a Bigfoot, or do they believe more, like you said, maybe it's a mantid being, maybe it's an alien of some sort, or maybe anything it could be besides Bigfoot? Because I clearly would say, after what I have experienced, that reminds me identically to what I've seen. Mm-hmm.
Well, it actually had different people. Barb actually did not even want to say anything about this being a cloaked Bigfoot, because at that point in time, it kind of rocked her world, because she was actually more tuned into a physical creature, that had normal, physical characteristics, but wasn't doing any kind of sci-fi abilities or anything, or the ability to cloak, or the ability to camouflage yourself, or anything like that. So that was so there's differing opinions about it. My opinion, of course, I think it is a Bigfoot with a younger one on the shoulders that as it takes off, but it's definitely camouflaging itself in a kind of cloaked fashion. And, like you said, when you're talking about different ones in the audience, and then when you throw the word cloak out there, then people, it isn't so much that it's hocus pocus when you say cloak, because I've been doing more research and kind of jumping ahead of myself into my more current stuff. But the cloaking is even from a scientific standpoint, is starting to become more it's actually being put in practice in the military, and how they do that, and also about the bending of light and the change of colors into the ultraviolet in the infrared spectrum, which I can cover later, if we have time. But long story short, there's a lot of us do believe it's just the Bigfoot, and had the ability to do that. So because from that point, that little area that I want to talk about here is only about 200 or 300 yards in perimeter around that, and it all centers around that portal, or that light beams that I was talking about, and that orb. That was just the start of the story, basically. And that was on September 12th of 2014, the day after we saw the cloaking one. And then that next day I saw the orb and the portal, and then it disappeared. But that's just the start of the story, because I've had more encounters after that in that same area.
It seems to be it does seem unbelievable to those who haven't had an experience like this, Sam. But to those of us who have, it's actually a very, very nice story to hear, because it gives me personally that type of confirmation that I have needed. Because like I said earlier, when I have told people and other researchers about the cloaking, they're like, well, that's strange. And that's about as far as the question and the commentary went on that. Whereas I think it was worth a lot more value than just a quick 1 or 2 word sentence. You know what I'm saying? So, when you have these experiences, describe the area that you were in, because there's a lot of people who listen to this show who do not understand or know how dense the forest is from British Columbia all the way down to Northern California.
Yes, it's not sparse like in some parts of the country where you get on the other side of the Cascades in the less watery zone, where the trees. Now, I will tell you right now that there's huge numbers of them in the Blue Mountains. Which here's the common points that we've discovered is they're always close by to a source of water. In this case, and also a source of food, which we have salmon runs up through these parts. It's always associated with a dense forest area. In which case, we have an unusual topography in this one little valley area where we have the water source running through there. We have the several elevated ridges right above there, and we have the small valley. And then, surprisingly, there's a swampy area there, and the swampy areas always seem to be seems to be a key point about them being there. Okay, I'm also thinking that it also has a lot to do with I'm going to go ahead and say it. High energy vortex areas of that seem to attract this as well. So, which I honestly feel that this one spot is actually meets that criteria for events to happen there. So, sometimes I will mention, I did in the book was basically writing about how what to expect if you're going to look for them and everything is they're even finding them in the cities. I mean, you're going to find this kind of amazing, but if you go and there's a wooded area in the city, usually there's a green belt that runs along a river. The green belt eventually hooks up to the mountains, or, there's a continuation of forested lands that lead right into the city or into a park area. You'd be surprised to note that we've had interactions in the city area, in the urban area.
I do believe that. I want to get to some questions for my audience here. This one comes from God of Thunder, Joe here, at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. And he is asking, why do you think it seems that so many researchers do not want to recognize the supernatural or paranormal aspects attributed to Bigfoot?
I think that's a good question, and I think it's I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I do feel that when you watch these programs that are on TV, like Finding Bigfoot, or I don't want to pick on them too badly, but or other shows, what do you see? You actually see programs where they don't find them. It's or they're portrayed with such fear, and so they make a point that I think it's actually an effort to downplay to keep the myth going that they're not real. There are so many people out there, and not just myself, but many people out there are having regular interactions with the Bigfoots and seeing them, and you can have multitudes of people that give eyewitness accounts to them. But for some reason, when it comes to mainstream exposure to this, there seems to be an effort to suppress the knowledge that they exist.
And it's
That's
funny.
the answer I can get.
And it's funny because I've been having that same conversation with a friend of mine recently in regards to Bigfoot. Is what is this denial that is going on by the mainstream with all this evidence that is going on out there? I mean, all these people can't be wrong. There has to be a reason why Bigfoot makes every bloody picture go blurry. You know what I'm saying? And yet the mainstream just doesn't want to tackle that. And I find it very, very ironic that they will make up assumptions of what is happening a trillion miles into space, but they won't take the evidence right here on Earth to confirm or deny the existence of Sasquatch.
Well, part of it too, part of it is science. And basically, you have No, I would not be considered a scientist myself. I'm familiar with the fact that they use scientific science uses methodologies to prove or disprove something. But unfortunately, the methodologies that they use puts them in a box, basically, that makes assumptions about what the Bigfoot is. If you're trying to make an assumption as a scientist that the Bigfoot is just some hairy, oversized gorilla that's running out in the woods, then using your methods will never prove anything, because it's making the assumption that they're, number one, they're not going to be as intelligent as humans, and they do not have special abilities. Well, you're shooting yourself in the foot at that point, because everything associated with them is going to happen or be experienced outside of the box of your experience, of what you're looking for, trying to prove. So, for instance, let me give the example. The one complaint I hear all the time is, how come it's always blurry? How come the picture isn't clear? And they're expecting, that they are not going to be convinced unless you and the Sasquatch are going to stand there together and get a selfie together in a nice clear picture. Well, first of all, they're always going to be they're never going to be really close to you, so we're talking about at least 200 or 300 yards from you. They could be up closer, but you'd never know it. But in my case, I've been able to develop a technique of taking a background picture. And using a very high-resolution camera, I'm able to kind of like enlarge the photo and pull out one hiding where they're poking their head out or something. You can actually see them. And at that point, when you enlarge the photo, you have some degradation, and hence it's not going to be as clear as if it's right there. So you got that going on. Then you got the fact that they do mess with your camera, and this is the part that they will find very hard to believe. Is I've actually had a camera or my cell phone I'd be using out there, and I know they're nearby. The cell phone would start to act up. The electronics would act up. They're affecting the electronics somehow, electromagnetically. One time I tried to take a picture with the cell phone, and when I did, of this gifting site, all of a sudden the picture is clear right in the middle. There is no distortion, but yet there's this swirling vortex that exists all around the inside of the photo. And you can't make this stuff up. I don't have any kind of special effects on the cell phone to even create something like that. And these things happen all the time. Or the fact that you get out there and all of a sudden we do have a thermal imaging camera that we try to use, and if they don't want you to use it, they shut it off, and we can't turn it on. And then we have to go back and then it turns on, or they'll completely drain a good set of batteries down to nothing. And then you got to replace the batteries. So these are normal, regular occurrences of what happens. And then we figure, if you don't want us to use the camera, we won't use it. So
I want to get to a question from Spear here. She is asking,
sure.
What about the theory that if they are confirmed, that it will cause legal problems with the parklands because of the Protected Species and Indigenous Peoples Acts?
Well, that's a possibility. If they did confirm something like that, then they'd have to have some kind of legal recognition. And but the problem is the Sasquatch aren't just going to negotiate with anybody to try to get protected. Like, people feel that they need to be protected. I think they do well on their own without having to worry about that. But I don't know what to say about that. Mm-hmm. Seriously.
Well, it is a concern, though, because, all of a sudden, we prove this creature, it would probably have to go on an endangered species list or something along those lines until we are able to get some sort of numbers on how many are there. So all of a sudden, all this free land that is out there would probably be eaten up. And then you have the other hand, Samantha, where now everybody who has to trophy hunt is going to go shooting anything that moves.
Well, that's the other concern too. Is if anything gets confirmed that they exist, then you're going to have, it's going to be a field day for the hunters and the kill. The one, I know the groups that I'm involved with in our Facebook groups and everything are no kill. We have that respect for them as not just animals, but they're actually, I view them as human beings that are just kind of like a fringe. They're related to us, but their DNA is just oddly different enough from us. But there is some connection to us as far as humans go. But yeah, you gotta. I don't know. Just a whole can of worms gets opened up from this. But right now, they're doing a good job of suppressing the idea that they even exist at all. And I don't know if that's by design, because I know full well that the powers that be know that they exist. They're not. I'm not naive. I know they exist. I've heard enough report.
And we're going to get into that. We're just going to get ready for a break here right now on Spaced Out Radio. Our guest tonight, Samantha Ritchie. She is a Bigfoot researcher out of the state of Washington. I'm thrilled about the video she shared online on YouTube. Just type in Cloaked Bigfoot on YouTube. Wow, I've seen that. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. I know Gloria's loving this song. She rocks it out every single night. Our music man, Bumblefoot, takes care of all of our music on SOR. Tomorrow night on the show, Rob Morphy is going to join us. We are going to be joined by the crypto historian tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to thank everyone listening in on Revolution Radio. Remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head over to freedomslips.com if you don't mind and donate today. And if you're listening in on the United Public Radio Network live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world, thank you for bringing Space Out Radio into your daily, nightly listening audience. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight. He must hate me this week leading up to Christmas. Polytetrafluoroethylene. I butchered that. Polytetrafluoroethylene. Polytetrafluoroethylene. I think I got it that time. Anyways, that is your password for tonight. Why he's using it, I have no idea. I have no control. Bill does on your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers. If you want to hit us up on social media, you can do so like Joe, God of Thunder, at hashtag Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like. Spaced Out Radio Show on Instagram. I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We bring our guest in tonight, Samantha Ritchie. She lives in Washington State. She is a Bigfoot researcher. Samantha, welcome back.
Right, thanks.
I want to catch up on some audience questions here, and Then we're going to hit right before the break. You think the government is involved in this cover-up somehow, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So we might have to get our tinfoil hats ready on that one, and mine is within reaching distance, so I'm proud of that. But let's get to some audience questions here. Galen is asking, is it common to hear Bigfoot sound like monkeys or swing in the trees?
Well, I don't know about the swinging in the trees bit, but I've actually heard the different kinds of, like a monkey chatter at times, but keep in mind they also can imitate a lot of different sounds as well. So they're very adept at imitating different kinds of animal sounds. The only difference will be that they're going to be a lot different. Whereas a bird sound that might be a little bit weak sounding, you're going to have this more powerful sound coming from them. So, yeah, but the monkey chatter definitely. On the younger ones, not the older ones.
Claudia is asking, what is your YouTube channel? Because she wants to see some of your videos.
Oh, go to YouTube and just simply, you can just simply put in search for Planet Sasquatch and pull up my channel that way and have at it. I have over 60 videos right now that I've put together.
Excellent. Excellent. Another question from Claudia, because when she gets on a roll, we usually get about 25, 30 questions from her in the night, and I love her for it. Yes, and she loves her Bigfoot. Do you believe, then, that with your evidence that you were showing, that Bigfoot is a multidimensional being? A lot of First Nations and American Indians believe this is the case.
Well, I've done a lot of reading. I try to stick to my own research, but I'm also have to rely on my own intuition. There's a lot of what is kind of coming through, because I am an empath, and I do have some psychic, which I haven't even gotten into this program at all. But they're establishing kind of a contactee type of relationship, where I feel this when it comes to interdimensional, I believe that they do have the ability to travel interdimensionally, but the fact that they themselves are they are a physical being, but they have the ability to transmute themselves into basically an invisibility, or I don't know the best way to describe it. They have the ability to kind of shift or go out of phase from our physicality, but they'll shift back. So I think they have two states of being that they're in at all times.
Do you think?
I mean, it's just my personal opinion. Yeah.
And the third trifecta, because we'll give Claudia the hat trick here. She is also asking, do you believe then that the light transports Bigfoot into other dimensions?
Oh, the light portals or the light beams that
Yes.
I was talking about? Or,
yes.
Okay. I honestly believe that there's a connection with the Bigfoots, and they're when they transmute into, I believe, orbs, basically, and that the orbs themselves are vehicles that are like when it went in there, it went somewhere else. I'll tell you why. When the portal disappeared, I didn't notice immediately, but I came back a week and a half later to the same spot. And when I looked down, and you can find all these pictures on the WordPress.com site under show slides. There was a perfect triangle that was seared in the ground. It looked like someone took a laser and shaved into the ground, and it disappeared. And whatever was there was gone. Leaves were gone. Roots were gone. Roots that had stuck out of the ground were sheared across, like someone took a beam of light or something that could shave the ground like that. And it was just I looked at it very closely. I even tried to see if there was a problem with radiation. I have a Geiger counter. No, I couldn't get any reading from that. But the fact that the ground was shaved like that was just so bizarre. It was a perfect triangle too. So wherever that portal went, it took part of the ground with it.
Let's get to another question. This one from Joe on the SOR Space Travelers Club. He is asking, is it possible some Bigfoot can cloak and play with portals and others are just plain old hairy guys in the forest, like two different types?
Oh, I believe there's different. Yes, I think there can be different species of, just like there are different humans. We come in different we come in different shades, I guess as you call it. But I believe there's different races of the Bigfoot. You talk about like the swamp, what they call the swamp ape, and also the dogman, and then there's the normal Sasquatch that people normally associate when they see like Harry and the Hendersons or some other images of that. And also they have what they call the ancient ones, which look more they look more human in the face, but they have hair, but they do look more human. So and I believe that some of them choose to enact some of these abilities, and some of them want to isolate themselves off and not participate in trying to utilize these abilities. So I do believe that there are some out there that don't use it as much as the others. No.
Let's move over to Twitter here, where at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, if you want to join in the fun. Joe, a.k.a. God of Thunder, is asking, Sam, do you consider Bigfoot as an early form of human developing alongside Homo sapiens, more of an animal? What do you think it is?
Oh, I don't believe that they're a more primitive form of the human. No. I do believe that there's a commonality between the human race and the Sasquatch. However, I've come to the conclusion, based on other research I've done and my own personal intuition into knowledge, is that we are a product, either the human race as well as the Sasquatch are a product of a hybridization in the distant past. And I do believe that we've had some common ancestry, but that we were taken on different paths, basically. So the Sasquatch, I believe, we're here a lot longer than we have. We're kind of a more recent hybrid that was created. Because obviously we have deficiencies in our being, and I think that was by design.
And Joe's other comment is, and I think this, he goes, if proving Bigfoot's existence means they're to be exploited or studied, he'd much prefer they remain the stuff of legend or myth. And this is where it really confuses a lot of people, because a lot of people want to know they're alive and well and part of the forestial population, but they don't want the hunters, the people, to go in there to try and, take advantage of a species we don't know how many there are.
Right. Well, it all depends on what you're trying to prove. Who are you proving it to? You could prove it to yourself that they exist. Just go out in the woods, and you'll know sooner or later, like a lot of us have. But this thing about people needing to go to an authority to tell them that they exist is I have a real problem with that. And as you say, it's if something was proven to be alive, then you would run into a lot of issues where you would have, then you'd run into this issue about hunting, that they'd be out there in more numbers trying to hunt this thing. It would, we already see this craze right now of trying to look for Bigfoot as it is. Can you imagine if they had proof, and they supposedly proof and everything, they brought a body in, then it would be like game on, basically, for them to go look for them, So I kind of like the fact they don't. I don't want them to be proved that they exist. I think things need to be accepted on faith. Everybody needs to have a personal experience, pure and simple.
So do you believe then that a lot of people, especially First Nations people, believe that you don't find Sasquatch. Sasquatch finds you. Sasquatch allows you to see it.
Yes, because that's what happened to me. I think all along they knew that I was going to be part of this program, that they were going to, and I'm still part of this. They're slowly pulling me into their circle, and right now it's going to culminate in something really big, because I feel that connection with them, and I feel that it has everything to do with humanity's future and the closeness we're coming to an event that is going to take place on this planet. And this is all leading up to this. This is the big climax.
Let's get to Eric's question. This is going back to the sounds and the photographs that are always blurry. He is asking, Sam, do you think that since Sasquatch doesn't use technology, that they have developed higher psionics?
I do believe that they have the ability to use, you can easily look at other creatures, for instance, that have the abilities that can, like, change colors, for instance, or talk about the electric eel. You could talk about beings that actually generate electricity or generate certain types of electromagnetic radiation. I believe that they do that. But then again, we're making another assumption. How do we know that they don't have access to technology? See, that's making another assumption. There is the possibility that they are being assisted. I don't think they created the technology, but I certainly believe they're being provided with technology for their protection.
Mario is asking, how do you think Sasquatch has the ability to cloak itself?
There are different ways. Matter of fact, I'm going to be doing a conference presentation on material that is describing there are different methods. For instance, and I've noticed this too, is every time I've taken pictures of them, they become a very dark spot on the photo. It's darker than the rest of the photo. And then when I'm trying to pull up the lighting, I'm finding out that what we're really dealing with is they're shading themselves out into the ultraviolet color band. If you're familiar with visible light, the range that we as humans can see goes from infrared, which is in the heat side of things, all the way up to the upper part of visible light that goes into ultraviolet. We as humans with our eyes cannot see ultraviolet. So if something theoretically is in front of us that is actually emanating a color in the ultraviolet range, what do you think you would see if you looked at that object or being? It would appear as a dark spot because our eyes would not reflect they wouldn't pick up the light because there's no sensitivity to it. Therefore, it looks like a dark spot. And that's exactly what's happening. You can't see the detail or anything. It looks like they're in the shadows. That's because of the ultraviolet band that they're putting themselves in. They're vibrating themselves into that color band. And the other thing I found out is they tend to have the ability to reflect light too, and are also when they're able to, like in the trees, they can emanate the colors of the trees, and all of a sudden when you're looking, it blends in so well that you can't distinguish them from the rest of the trees, that it's hard to break that detail out between that. And then finally, you have a situation for the ultimate cloaking, which is where there's still a solid being, but the ability to bend light around you is a very real possibility. Light can be bent. I mean, it's electromagnetically. It's not easy to do, but it's been scientifically proven that the light can be bent. And how that happens, I don't know. It's some kind of special electromagnetic ability. I know heat can bend light. Heat, when you look at a mirage, you can see the heat. The light just kind of like floats around. Heat actually will bend light. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now.
No, and I think it makes a lot of sense here, because what you're explaining, at least it makes sense to me, because like I said earlier in the program, in the first hour, what you have experienced, what you're explaining, totally explains what has happened to my sighting. But there are a lot of researchers out there who say, prove it to me scientifically. Prove it to me, and I like to call it the Caucasian Christian science background, that people can't think out of the ordinary of the scientific box rather than any other theories. And I find it laughable at times that you're eliminating theories on opinion rather than experiences people are having. But there are people out there who will say, I don't know what happened to the Sasquatch, even though they've been following 120, 130 prints that just disappear into nowhere, or something along those lines. So how do you convince the skeptical Christian scientific researcher that all of this theory that you're trying to explain is actually plausible?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to convince anybody, and especially, my effort really isn't towards trying to, I am trying to lay it out where, hey, these things, this is existing technology. These are plausible concepts that beings like this could utilize, because the military is already utilizing things that have to do with cloaking. So it's not too much of a stretch to think that this can't be applied already in nature. It seems like everything we've been developing in science has come from nature. So there are things out there that we still haven't tapped in, and obviously there's a lot of creatures in the area of cryptozoology that remain hidden to this day because of the fact they don't want to open up the fact that these creatures may be vibrating. They might be in a color band you can't see, or they're able to just mask themselves so well against the background you never know they're there. And the other concept too that I've been another concept is of course about into the area of quantum physics, about the ability to speed up atoms, speed up particles. If you were able to do that, you would put yourself out of sync with anything around you, and light would pass. In other words, things would pass right through you if you were able to have the ability to vibrate your basic quantum, the quantum signature of your atoms and things like that. So if you just simply increase the speed of that, then all of a sudden it's out of sync with the rest of physicality, and therefore it would seem invisible. So we see that with, like, say, radio waves. Radio waves go through us all the time, and there are different frequencies and things like that. But at some point, a radio frequency bounces off of things because it bounces off solid matter and gets reflected. So there's a lot that goes on with the idea of frequency and electromagnetic waves that has everything to do with whether these creatures can actually change their own composition along those lines and disappear or be cloaked.
Go ahead, please.
So it's just like we have physical matter like glass, for instance. You could clean a glass pane to the point where you don't know it's there, and you try to walk through it. You can't, but you can see right through it. I mean, it's not too much of a stretch to think that there's structuring of matter that can actually be seen. You can see right through it. So kind of open your mind up to the possibilities that these things can happen.
So it leads along the question: do you think Bigfoot then is a creature from Earth, or do you think it's alien of some sort?
Well, then all I can do is offer speculation at this point. I'm going to say that based on a lot of things I've seen, sometimes I don't think we're even from this planet either. And I'm going to give you a real quick reason why. everything else that seems to be on this planet seems to be very well adapted to the environment. Look at the animals; they have the necessary fur. They adapt quite readily to the environment. It just seems strange that the human being, for instance, is not adapted to the environment at all. We seem to require artificial structures and artificial means of staying alive on this planet. This planet is very hostile to the human being. So it doesn't make sense to think that we, as humans, originated on this planet, because we would have never had a start in the first place. At least in our current form. So I think maybe part of our gene pool comes from this planet, from a native species of the hominid, but I know that a big part of it must be alien. And I believe the same thing is true of the Sasquatch, that we have common alien ancestry. Because I don't believe that everything are just simply originated from this planet. No.
But if it does have supernatural ability, cloaking, the ability to just disappear into portals, the ability to reappear, to allow people to see it. I mean, we are talking about the reigning hide-and-seek champion right now. We do know this.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But then you add in the perception that it may be able to manipulate technology, that it may be telepathic. To me, when I look at it in my small human brain here, I look at something that does not seem to be of this planet, because we as humans cannot do the majority of the things that we are surmising Bigfoot can.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's more of a case where we're the ones with the disability. I think we would have had those capabilities. I think we're in line to have those capabilities. They've just been deactivated for some reason, DNA-wise. And it's just like with the Bigfoots, for instance, they're coming to the conclusion that they can also shapeshift. And I know during the break we talked about the video that I was going to allude to, that of where you can actually see something you can see it materialize in front of you, and then change the shape of its head and actually move and twist behind the tree. And that video, that's another eye opener in itself, because I know that's part of their nature,
Mm-hmm. It's just very, very intriguing, because there is so much going on with it. Let me ask you this then. Do you believe, as you laid mention to right before we went to break, that one way or another the government, whether it's the government of Canada, the government of the United States, knows this creature exists?
I think everything's in a... anybody in the know knows that everything's compartmentalized in the hierarchy. So I don't believe that the lower levels of the hierarchy are aware that they exist. But I think if you get near the what I consider shadow government, or the dark part, you go dark into the real power that's in the top of the hierarchy, they absolutely know that they exist. Yeah, and the thing is, well, it's just like anything else. They control the narrative. There's reasons for not allowing Bigfoot to be acknowledged as real. And because it would totally, first of all, it would totally disrupt everybody's view of their religious beliefs, for instance. The narrative that, man is the only, our version of man at least, is the only version that's, sanctioned by God, or whatever the case may be. That they're, in other words, it's pushing the narrative that only man is the intelligent creature on this planet, and that everything else is considered an animal of lesser, inferior in mentality. And if something came along that showed there's other beings here that are just as smart, or perhaps smarter than man, then that would totally create some problems for them. It's a control problem. and they want to control the narrative. You know,
it doesn't make sense why they would want to control it. Now, there has been theories and speculation that at one point Sasquatch, they may have been trying to turn into a super soldier. It's believed the Smithsonian actually has bodies of Sasquatch, and they used to have them in view for the public until they pulled them off about 50, 60 plus years ago. So there are a bunch of narratives as to why the government would want to cover this up.
Yeah, you're talking about the skeletons, the giant skeletons.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. And there are pictures. You see them. They obviously don't look fake. You know, when you see someone hunched over a gigantic skull. You know, and yeah, I mean, it's just no one really knows for sure. It's just that it's after a while you start putting two and two together about the fact that, first of all, they're simply hiding things. They're hiding. There are so many things that go in this category. Not only hiding the things related to the skeletons and about the larger elongated skulls and things like that, but also about ancient technology. Every time you go to an archaeological site where something's important, all of a sudden it gets cordoned off, and the people are, you know, then the military comes in, and then, you know, this seems to be a common story line. Every time there's something important, it gets cordoned off, and then there's no comment about it, and then it just disappears. And I think that's all part of trying to hide the true history of humanity away from us. Is because they have a certain narrative or certain history they want to teach us, and they don't want to spill the beans on what really has happened.
So are you saying then that you believe Sasquatch has played a major role over the years in human evolution?
I think they've been they have been there all along, and they are protectors of the forest. But they're also looking out after a little brother, which is the human race.
That's heavy thought. Very heavy thought. I want to get to a question here from our chat room. This one comes from Robert, all the way over in Australia. And he is asking, if Sasquatch is covered in fur, would the Australian version also be covered? If so, with the heat we get, wouldn't they be more likely to be found more around water sources?
Well, you're like referring to the Yowie. I think it's called Yowie.
Yes.
In Australia. Well, the hair, they're always going to be near water sources, and as far as their ability to regulate heat is just like the animals as well. I mean, you have animals with hair. I mean, with fur, basically, that even in the hottest summer they stay cool, even with all that fur and everything. So their bodies are well suited to deal with the extremes of cold and extremes of heat, and to regulate their body temperatures. Something that we can't seem to do on our own without putting a massive amount of clothes on or stripping down to or whatever when it gets too hot. So
Mario would like to know a couple of questions here. Number one, how do you think Bigfoot has the ability to open portals?
I could only, I'm going to speculate on this one. Might be more on this later, but the portals could possibly be activated based on sound, certain types of infrasound or some type of low-level sound or a combination of tones or electromagnetic signals that could activate them. Yes. And I know that they exist. I mean, there's lots of portals that are invisible to us that are there, but it requires a certain type of device or the ability to generate those kind of waves to activate them. Mm-hmm. And honestly, you don't want to really experiment and actually try to activate one, because you have no idea what you're doing. You don't know where it's going to take you, and you probably would never come back.
Mm-hmm. And what about shape-shifting? Do you think you buy into the theory that they do have the ability to shape-shift?
Well, I got a video that kind of shows that. So, now whether or not this was the same being as the one that was like the Sasquatch that I've seen several times, and I've seen one actually wave at me, for instance. And when I took a cell phone picture of him, I took 2 pictures of him, and he was kind of cloaked in kind of a blackish darkness that looked like a mirage in front of him. But and of course he didn't morph or anything like that. But this one being that was about 13 foot tall, 11 to 12 foot tall by the tree did. And it just kind of morphed, looked like an alien, then it looked like a Bigfoot, then it looked like something else, and then it kind of went behind the tree and disappeared. So, and I've heard about this before, and there is a possibility of shape shifting. Now, I don't know if it's because of the fact that the bodies itself shifts or anything, but it could be a visibility thing. In other words, if a being is able to kind of cloak themselves, it stands to reason that they can probably create some matter around them to change or distort what they look like, so they can take on different kinds of appearances, even though their main physical form may be totally different. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's basically they have a regular physical form, but they're able to somehow cloak and then create a visibility vapor around them to make them look like something else. And that's more speculation.
And that makes sense to me, because when I hear you say that, Sam, I automatically get the pictures. Maybe that's the reason why they have the ability to also manipulate photographs or videos.
Yeah, like smoke, for instance. I mean, they could actually create controlled smoke matter, so it looks like it's a smoky type of fuzzy. Yeah, very, 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 very likely.
Love how you're tying this all together for me. Love how you're tying it all together. So, the government then, the reason then you think they are keeping it quiet is because maybe they want to learn more about the species and the supernatural abilities it has?
Oh, I think that's a very real part of it too. I can't think of the military-industrial complex or whoever is, the powers that be are part of that, are going to turn down an opportunity to learn more about how something works. And I honestly think that's the reason why a lot of these archaeological sites get cordoned off, because in Iraq is a good example too. Or Egypt underneath the pyramids, is because that they want to be the first ones to grab ancient technology or anything and reverse engineer it and utilize it for their interest. And the same thing goes for the special abilities of creatures. Is they definitely might have a program where they're actually doing that. So. I just honestly feel that they know about it, and that's about all I can say about it, really, on that part.
So do you believe then that maybe Bigfoot has been currently captured by the government? Do you think they have the species, whether it's dead or alive?
I don't know. And I'm just going into speculation, because I really haven't gone. My field of expertise has been the detective to go and find out what the government's doing. I've been led to conclusions based on some other research I'm doing that ties other things together. Where have they captured one? It's very possible they might have captured one before. I know that I've heard reports of every time that, they say, well, how come there's never a body? Like, for instance, we have a forest fire. I've heard reports of where Bigfoot would die in a fire, for instance, and all of a sudden the military's right on it immediately, and all of a sudden they get the body and take it, snatch it away and take it somewhere. And I've heard this before, that, that every time that something like that happens, that there's something on the scene to get it immediately, So,
well, there was the situation in Nevada near Reno where that supposedly happened, but the Bigfoot walked out and survived. Mm-hmm. And they applied Medicare to it because it was burning, and then it was loaded up into a unmarked vehicle and driven away, and the forest firefighters were told never to speak about it again.
Yeah, that could, like I said, I've had a vague recollection. I do a lot of reading, so it's probably a vague recollection. This could have been the very same story. But I think I've heard of them actually taking the dead body and taking it off. They didn't want it being found by anybody. They want to make sure that average Joes like you and me or whatever are not going to see that.
Well, and another example of that is Mount St. Helens right in Ape Canyon. There were witnesses to the Chinook helicopters going down and picking up the deceased or the wounded Bigfoot to get them out of the area so no one would find them.
Yep. That's why I'm led to believe that there's a connection with the military, either hiding them, studying them, or something. But they definitely know there's an existence. It's funny you mentioned Ape Canyon because I went with a group and we camped down there right below Mount St. Helens, a very, very active Bigfoot area. We had interactions when we were there too, so we know that they're still there.
That's good that they were able to come back. I'm surprised they did, considering their entire area was literally decimated on May 18th, 1980, when Mount St. Helens, literally half the mountain collapsed on itself. But there's also...
You'd be surprised is all the balsa, I'm trying to think of the type of rock that's...
pumice?
I'm losing it here. Say again?
The pumice rock?
Yeah, it's a balsam or something. Yeah. Anyway, it's created a lot of cave areas around there. So there's a lot of places where they can actually hide, and I believe it's created quite a habitat down through there. So, I know it was disastrous, but it was 30-some-odd years ago. 36 years ago, as a matter of fact, when this happened. And I remember it completely because I was here when it happened. And but everything's remarkably has grown back, and things as far as the interactions with the Sasquatch, they are definitely a strong group of them there.
What about the idea that the Sasquatch that are located in Ape Canyon seem to be a more aggressive, angry style of Sasquatch compared to, say, its northern brothers, which seem to be more docile?
Well, I don't know about that specifically. I do know that on the other side of Mount Rainier, opposite from where we generally are, there's a town of Ashford. And there seems to be two different groups. There's one group that is more aggressive, that runs one side of the mountain, and they don't really want to have a whole lot to do with tourists or people or anything like that, so they tend to be more aggressive. And they've been known to throw things, kind of like, not to hurt people or anything, but if they're campers there, they don't really want them there. And yet, just down from them, there's definitely a different clan that is interested in interacting with the humans. I was part of that too. I had camped there just a couple of months ago, and we've had some interactions with that group, and they're totally different than the ones that are aggressive. So you have that. Now, I don't know about the situation at Ape Canyon, but I know just like I said on just the other side of Mount Rainier, there's definitely different temperaments to the different groups.
It seems, though, that specific area around Mount St. Helens just seems to be pissed off. And it reminds me of the story back in the 30s where the hunters actually were stored up in that cabin and they saw one and they shot one. And, well, the Bigfoot never really forgot about that. Do you think they have long-serving memories to remember what people have done, whether it's good or bad?
I'm sure if you made one angry, they'd definitely kind of keep you in mind. So, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be like the Hatfields and McCoys, where it's going to be this long-standing feud. But I do believe that that they're going to avoid a situation if they've had problems. Their best way of dealing with problems is probably avoidance. If there's they're not into the confrontation with humans at all. I mean, as a matter of fact, they are generally a gentle being, and they're trying to live their lives, and they have to do whatever they have to do to remain in stealth, and especially in close quarters with the mountains, because there's people all over the mountains, and so they have to develop the technique to stay hidden all the time. I know the reason why I see juveniles more often than I do the adults is because the juveniles are kind of like green behind the ears, and so they're more curious, and they end up on my camera or videos more often than the adults because they know better.
When it comes to the West Coast, do you think that the reason why people on the West Coast, from British Columbia down to California, and you can move into Montana, Idaho, Nevada as well, and that's literally the extent of states I know that actually connect, being Canadian and all.
Mm-hmm.
But do you believe then that maybe people are so accepting of the fact that the forests possibly have Sasquatch in them that they just kind of write it off nonchalant, like, yeah, they're there, who knows if they exist, who knows if they're really there, but if they're there, let them enjoy their land, their territory. Do you think that's a real attitude on the West Coast? Because let's face it,
believe, yeah,
we are more laid back out here.
Yeah, well, I mean, just in the town of Greenwater, just if it's representative of average people, in the last 4 years, in the beginning, it was just everything's a myth. But then there were different people having experiences and seeing them, and you basically everybody that lives around there, I would say the majority of people acknowledge that they exist. That they don't bother. They're not there to bother humans, but they're very real, and they live out in the woods, and I honestly believe that people's acceptance of these things are becoming more real over time. And just like the whole thing about, I guess you want to talk about the UFO or the ET, the possibility that they exist is also seems to be more accepted as well. That we're open to the possibilities now more than ever. I think the West Coast seems to be way more open about it than the East. So,
and it's the marijuana. Let's be honest.
Everybody's marijuana. It doesn't. Then you don't really care one way or the other. I think that's what that does.
No, you see Sasquatch in the forest, you're going to spark a doobie right there with them.
Yeah, probably.
Pass it on over, put on some Bob Marley and just get cranked up in the middle of the forest. That's just the way it works here on the West Coast. And people are laughing in the chat rooms right now over that one. I do want to spend some time.
I want to tell you, I want people to know this, that I may take a sip every once in a while, but I do not smoke anything at all. So I'm not seeing things.
I know the feeling. I do want to spend some time here as we got about, I'm just looking at the clock here, about 7 minutes before we got to go to break. Telepathy. And we can continue this topic well after the break if we need, but I think this is an important topic because I am a firm believer that in all the strangeness that has happened with myself and my own experiences over the last 5 years, the one thing I never put much stock in at all was anything telepathic. I know as a kid, you're playing cops and robbers or army men or space cowboys or whatever you want to do with your buddies back in the day, and you're pretending that you can talk telepathically to each other. I get that. But I'm thinking there is something really to this in regards to telepathy and encounters with Sasquatch. What do you believe?
I believe that telepathy is something that we all do completely, but we're unaware of it. How many times have you, you think about your mom or something, and then all of a sudden you call and the phone doesn't ring, and all of a sudden you find out that, oh, hey, and your mom's calling you at the same time. How many times have those things happened? And then you want to bring up the thing with a particle. The new science has talked about particle entanglement, where two particles are separated immense distances, but yet they respond to the same stimuli simultaneously. So it's a very real thing where the Sasquatch had been able to develop those skills, and humans were just kind of we're getting there. And making a connection, for instance, I think once you start to, some of us have developed, especially those of us that are empathic or have developed some psychic skills, are already utilizing some of those skill sets already when it comes to telepathy. And it isn't so much that telepathy has to do with language, but sometimes it's the conveyance of thoughts. Thoughts are being conveyed, not in words so much, but the thought, the concept of the thoughts are sometimes popping in your head, and it's just like suddenly you don't know where it came from. Well, that's all part of telepathy too. And I know since I've had my encounters with the Sasquatch, I've had a lot of conceptual stuff that just ends up, getting downloaded, basically, into my being, into my head, enough to where I've written some information in a book, and I continue to get these thoughts on life and about how they live and what, mankind's relationship with them as well. So there's a lot to this.
Uh-huh. Have you ever had any personal telepathic communication with Sasquatch? And if so, for the people who've never had that experience, what is that like?
Well, some people, like I said, if there are some people that have the ability where words actually come into play, and I haven't had that. No, mine have been more subtle. And it isn't as earth-shattering as you may think. In my case, I would be out in the woods and I'd be in a meditative state or trying to meditate, and all of a sudden different things come in, different ideas come in, I'd have to write them down. And so it's usually communicating about, how to respect the forest, how to, I think it's just providing me with the skills or the keys to further enhance my abilities to communicate with them more. In other words, they give me a few nuggets of information so I can process on this, and then that leads me into a closer connection with them, and then they provide me a little bit more over time. So this is how it's been with me. It's been like I'm going through school with them. They're slowly educating me on what I need to know. So
I know that people that I have spoken with in my personal circle who have had that sort of contact with Bigfoot on a telepathic level, for them, they've got everything from pictures in their minds where they're supposed to have their meetup with Sasquatch, what they are supposed to bring, what they are not supposed to bring. And one of the things that I have found constant in that research is that a lot of times Sasquatch will be adamant in a telepathic level to say no guns.
Oh, I can believe that. Yeah. Yep. I'm also aware that I'm not going to allow any entity, including the Sasquatch, to. One of the dangers too is being able to say, I'm not going to allow anybody to say, these are my quests. I want you to do this, and because I'm maintaining my free will, So if you're sharing thoughts with me or something like that, I make sure that they respect my free will of space. And, like you said, in the case of their request about something that, I could see that not bringing the guns. They're very intimidated by that,
Do you think then it's, and I'll get you to answer this in about 20 seconds, do you think then that it is their ability to smell gunpowder that pushes them away?
No, they recognize what guns look like. They know when you're carrying a weapon or something. They've had enough familiarity with it to know that. And they smell, of course, sure, they can smell that too.
Well, I still think there's something to it. I know there's probably people listening who are saying, you guys are just way off out into lunch, into space, or wherever you want to be. But I think there's something to it. I really do. And I wouldn't probably believe it if I haven't seen it and had the experiences that I have had personally, but it's for each person to learn on their own. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio, 2 hours down with Samantha Ritchie, 1 hour to go. We're talking Bigfoot throughout the night. We'll be right back.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Space Wire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spaceoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night on the show, we will be discussing cryptids. The crypto historian Rob Morphy will be back. His final appearance of 2016. I love it when Rob comes on the air. His stories are so intriguing. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, right here at the mighty SOR. If you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Remember, head over to freedomslips.com and donate today. If you're listening in on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world, good to have you along for the ride. wherever you are on this planet. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, polytetrafluoroethylene. Polytetrafluoroethylene is your password. Try and use that one in a sentence, Space Travelers, if you can. If not, well, at least you know your nightly password. If you want to follow me on social media, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Also on Twitter, if you want to chat with us live during the show, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to get your questions and comments in. I'm live with you right now. If you want to follow us on Facebook, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio Show. Give our Instagram page like, Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking Bigfoot, Sasquatch of the West Coast. Samantha Ritchie is our guest. You can find her YouTube channel, Planet Sasquatch. Samantha, welcome back.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about predators. There's a lot of predators on the West Coast in the forest. Everything from moose, deer, elk, cougars, wolves, bears, from black bears to grizzly bears. Where do you think Sasquatch sits on the totem pole of predators in our forests?
As far as, I think they are, well, first of all, when it respects the humans, I don't think there's a problem. As far as their, nothing's going to compete with them. I don't believe they're not just vegetarian. They actually hunt elk and deer. So I know that they do eat them every so often. So, but I don't think it's completely their diet. They also eat salmon, and everything else. I think what if some of the things I've learned is when the Bigfoots are in the area, there is usually dead silence when it comes to any other animals nearby. At least larger predatory animals, like in our particular area, we've had rounds with cougars showing up. Just one of them that just happened to be coming around every so often. And then black bear, and sometimes they're nowhere to be seen, especially when the Sasquatch are around. So they kind of avoid them just like humans. They just don't want to be around them, So thankfully we don't have that much of a problem in our area. The predatory animals do try to avoid the humans as much as possible, although I think it's smart that we as humans should carry bear mace, at the very least. I don't necessarily like to carry a gun. I don't. Some people feel you should be carrying a gun with you out in the woods all the time. I think it's very intimidating. However, I think it's smart to carry the bear mace, at the very least. So,
I know up here in my territory, I've been tipped off to an area where there's an old mine shaft that hasn't been used in a long, long time. And the First Nations in my area, they strongly believe, and I'm waiting for some photos to come my way in regards to it, that there is a lot of Sasquatch activity in this area. But they also forewarn that there's a high concentration of cougars in the area, as well as grizzly bears, never mind the black bears, which will run away if they see you unless it's a mama and her cubs. So there is dangers out there that you have to watch out for. So are you saying then that if you hit the area right, you're not going to run into these apex predators that might be pissed off that there's humans around?
Well, I can't say that for 100% sure, but I do notice that when they are in the immediate area, I'm talking about within like a quarter-mile area of where they're at, that all of a sudden things get pretty quiet, and then there's usually, you don't have the activity of the other animals nearby as much. So, however, I think you should always have protection with you. I mean, I think a big part of it, too, is what part of the woods are you going into? You really have to know your environment. And I would advise anybody that says there are certain parts of the country where you need to carry a gun. You know, I mean, you could have a high concentration of the predatory type of animals, you know, high concentration of cougars or the bear or something like that, where you need to have the protection. Even if the Bigfoots are around, you can't really depend on that. So, for instance, in our area, we know kind of just from the locals, you know, we get a lot of, you know, all the locals are pretty well connected, so we know pretty much, you know, what shows up and what doesn't. And every once in a while, we'll get a cougar warning that says we have a cougar that's kind of showing up in the one part of town certain times of the night. And we stay on alert about that. But normally I don't have a problem. But you got to know where you're going into. So I think that's a personal choice, but it's also something you just got to use your common sense and do what you need to do to protect yourself.
So be it that, let's say, hypothetically speaking, that Bigfoot is on the top of the podium when it comes to apex predators in the West Coast forest. Mm-hmm. We do not have a lot of dogman sightings around here, if any at all. Yet, from what I'm hearing from Linda Godfrey, the dogman sightings are starting to encroach more and more on the West Coast. Have you investigated at all the stories or the possibility that dogman may be coming into more Bigfoot territory?
I tend to feel that they are another type of race of Bigfoot, and I do believe that they are in close proximity to the regular Sasquatch. I've had some pictures I've taken where I've actually seen what appears to be the regular Sasquatch group or the clan, and then there would be a dog-like looking creature with a long snout that would be an associated. I've seen the same creature with the same clan or with the same young one, for instance. So I don't know if it's because they have pets, just like we do, you know, which could be a dog type of pet, or a young dog man or something like that, but I know they exist. And some areas of the country, I think they're a little bit more prevalent. We have one YouTuber researcher that I'm familiar with, and I'll give his shout out for Kirk Stokes is his name. He has a YouTube channel, and he's in Kentucky. And Kentucky has and his is he sees a lot of dogmen. He's got a lot of dogmen things showing up on his stuff. So they may be more prevalent in other parts of the country. Although I do believe they're up here too, you know, in the Northwest.
I'm wondering why most people are not reporting them from the West Coast here then, if they are being seen or there are reports being heard around, because do you think it's because people are just so used to this being Bigfoot territory that to throw in another cryptid would just kind of throw the whole mystique of Bigfoot right out of whack?
Well, I think part of the problem is that they are lumping the same thing together, because anything falls outside of the norm is usually, there must be a Sasquatch, and a lot of times they'll have a sighting, but it'll be a vague sighting. For instance, something walks into their range, but they're not having a really good look at the face or anything like that, or they're actually hearing something. You know, so a lot of your experiences are coming from audio, oral. I mean, from hearing it, or from just catching just a glimpse of them, because they're not going to really be like standing in the middle of the road and just stare at you. All those happened before, and those are pretty much confirmed Sasquatch sightings. But I think that could be part of the reason why it's not just absolutely. They think it's Sasquatch even though it looks like a dogman, because they don't know. Most of it's just average people that don't have a real clear idea what they're looking at. You know.
Do you think that they are a companion species?
I'm led to believe that.
And what would make you believe that?
I believe, I wish I could give you an answer about that. When I'm out in the woods and when I'm getting the intuitive or the psychic feeling or the indication that they work together. They're on the same page, basically, most of them.
Be one hell of a wrestling tag team, Bigfoot and Dogman.
I know.
Wouldn't want to step into the squared circle with either one of them, that's for sure. I can tell you that. But there is all due seriousness about this, because if they are one of the same or a relative of each other, that would make sense. But if you go on the East Coast, they're not so sure that they are together. They're not so sure, in the researchers I have talked to, or they are almost convinced that there are Bigfoot territories and then there are Dogman territories, and they don't really intertwine with each other. But you see that different being on the West Coast.
Well, it's different out here, but I've heard of the experiences of horrendous experiences, even with the Bigfoots, for instance, or harassing people at a farmland or something like that. I know of someone's trying to sell, I believe it's in Georgia, is trying to sell a piece of property they've been on because of the fact they're harassed so much by the Bigfoots and making noises or banging against their trailer and everything. They're trying to sell it, and they're specifically trying to sell it to Bigfoot researchers to get out of there. What would cause them to do that? I have no idea. But all I can do is I'm more comfortable reporting on what I have experiences up here in the Northwest, especially in the Cascades. It could be a very different. I can't really be an authority to report on what may possibly happen in another part of the country, or for another continent. When you're dealing with the Yeti, or the in Australia you're dealing with the Yowie or something like that, it could be a totally different story. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, John has an interesting question at #SpacedOutRadio on Twitter, and he is asking, do you think that southern Bigfoot are smaller than the northern counterpart where you are, much like deer are?
I'm not really sure. I know that the southern, is he referring to the swamp ape type of Bigfoot, or
yes,
just the regular Bigfoot? Oh, the swamp. It's very possible. I think they could be. I'm not really sure. I'm not going to say something, without being an authority about it. So I do know that, in my investigation up here, that you'll have the younger ones, of course, when they start to become teenagers or juveniles. The juveniles are going to be at least 6 to 7 feet tall, and by the time they're adults, you're talking about. Especially the males, anywhere from 11 to 13 feet tall, or possibly higher if they're older. So that's pretty much the size ranges we run into all the time. And the footprints, of course, correspond to that too, where the footprints generally on the juveniles will be about like a man's size, like 12 inches, 12 to 14 inches, and then by the time the adult, they're closer to 18 inches in length for the foot.
I have posted on @SpacedOutRadio on Twitter, our Twitter account, a couple of footprints that myself and Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines Report have been able to find in our area. We found them in October. So if you get a chance to head over to our Twitter account @SpacedOutRadio, you'll be able to see the pictures there if you do scroll down on those. A lot of researchers out there are trying different techniques, Samantha, regarding gifting sites. And they're having some very, very good success with the type of communication and almost like a trust that is being built between Sasquatch and themselves. What's your opinion on the gifting sites?
Well, a lot of us started out like that. I know Barb, she's the one that kind of introduced me to it, because she had a site where she was using like a wood stump, and would have we wouldn't just simply put food out, just like food that's in the open, because the thing is, you don't want first of all, you got several considerations. You don't want to be perceived as baiting animals out there by any means. So the idea is, and what I started doing, for instance, was doing jars of peanut butter. And we're talking about where the lid's still on there, hadn't been opened, the seal's still on, the little aluminum seal that's on the inside. And then we would put that out there, and maybe we would put out little trinkets and things like that, like marbles. Or what we're trying to do is make a determination what they're interested in and what they might be interested in playing with on the stump. So it's been kind of interesting to see what we would take a picture of this and then come back later, like the next day, and take another picture and see what's changed on it. But it's been interesting with the peanut butter because it's a very high protein type of product. And especially what I notice is when the salmon aren't running, certain parts of the year, that they would get the peanut butter. And sometimes they would take at first they were jamming a stick through the top of the plastic into the peanut butter and then using a stick to actually get it out. Then they figured out how to just simply unscrew the cap and then, take off or poke through the aluminum seal. And I had one jar out there where they just, they ate half the thing, half a gallon of peanut butter. They just went through it. And then I found the jar about 30 feet away, and it was laying there. And then you look inside, you can see where it was poked with a stick, all inside of there because there's leaves in there and everything. Animals aren't doing that. Animals aren't poking sticks inside of peanut butter to eat it, And so those are the kind of things to do. And then, of course, to make it even more difficult, sometimes we just take a rope and throwing it over a tree and then elevating up the food in a basket so we know darn well that something tall has to reach up there and get it and get to it. So we've had some interesting experiences with them getting the food that way, And then we know they wouldn't be interested in the peanut butter. When the salmon finally come through, all of a sudden the interest in the peanut butter drops off because now they're getting their protein from the salmon. But when it comes to gifting now, we kind of dropped off from doing any of it right now because they've kind of reached the limit of what they want to accept like that, and I don't think they're as interested in us providing them human food anymore. So at least the clan that we're dealing with.
I know Tyler Standing Bear, who is in Washington State, up north near Concrete, Washington. He actually uses marbles, and he finds that if he puts the marbles in a circle and he'll compress them down just a little bit so they can't move on their own, or a small rabbit or something can't move it. Mm-hmm. He notices, like, he'll take photographs of the patterns, and when he comes back to his gifting area, the marbles will be switched around. Have you ever had a situation like that, or what do you use besides peanut butter at your gifting site?
I'm trying to remember. Peanut butter was a big part of it. I think a few times I actually used the jerky, Jack Link's jerky. Or actually it was the little sausage. You really tend to have a preference for that. I made sure it was sealed properly, but we had it disappear. The little plastic wrapper that holds it. So one day I went back and it was gone. So the peanut butter was disappeared. I mean, I've had a case where it just totally disappeared. And what I did, and then of course the wrapper for the little pickled sausage thing disappeared too. And what was funny, I was looked all over, couldn't find it. So I came back the next couple of days and I went right back to the same area of my gifting site, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, near the top of the gifting site, here's this empty wrapper. It's like they put it back there because they must have liked. My impression was they liked it so much that they figured, well, they weren't going to get any more unless they put the wrapper back, so I could get them some more. And sure enough, I bought another one, and it disappeared quick. So, yeah, it's been interesting. It's been about a year since I've actually done gifting, but those are some of the experiences. And like you were talking about with the marbles, I know Barb had done a little bit more with that. We'd place things a certain way just to see if they moved things around or what they touched or what they were interested in. And Barb did use marbles quite a bit, too. Or actually colored stones,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Edie Kaito, who has been on this program 3 times, she's out of Indiana, and she has a very, very successful gifting site to the point where she has brought basketballs in where she has had full handprints actually pop the basketball. And she has left plastic juice box containers where she actually has measurements of the teeth as they have punctured the plastic to get to the juice inside. And the evidence that she had is phenomenal in regards to it. But we also have to remember, they do live in the wilderness, and we can't get them addicted to the human food or the human way of feeding either, can we?
No, and I don't feel it's the adults. It would be the young ones that are taking treats from this, and don't we feel that they have their own food sources and things like that are available in the woods, and certainly don't want to introduce into their diet the kind of things that we're putting in our own bodies, with this foods. So, some limited means is okay, but not to overdo it at all. No, I mean we've I think at one time tried something similar to a pie with a pie tin, and just mainly to see what they would do with it. And we actually had some prints on the pie tin, a hand print, and that's been done a couple of times. But now we don't do any of that. No.
Does that bug you, though, that you have the handprint, or in Edie's case, she has the teeth prints, you have footprints, you have all this potential evidence, and nobody takes it seriously?
Well, I have evidence just from my car in the Blue Mountains of southeastern Washington, because there's I've had interactions with them running up to me. A young one run up to me that didn't know I was sitting there. And I had my car parked in the perimeter of camp, and then because of the dust, we kick up on the car. And it'll wake up the next morning, and here's handprints all over my car. I mean, think about that. You have Bigfoot handprints all over the side, all over your car. And what do? You're going to wash your car? So I finally got my car to a point where I took the clear shipping tape and actually took the prints off with that and put it on black construction paper to try to at least preserve that. But I did take pictures of those. So I have pictures of handprints all over my car. And in a couple of places, it looks like they actually smashed their face up against it, because what they were doing was, whereas the car was parked in the perimeter, they would look through the car window from the back side all the way through the car to see what was going on in the camp. And so that's why they were putting their hands up there and pressing their face against the one side of the car, so they could see what we were doing in the camp itself without being seen.
What about games? Because we see a lot of, like, we get back to the marbles, for instance, where they are moving marbles. Have you ever played any types of games or set up games with them to see what the reaction would be?
Oh, that's a good one. I hadn't thought of that. And that's something I might like to try. I'm trying to come up with ways where they will interact. I think one of the things I have tried to do is implement a ground glyph using sticks to try to put it. What I have done is created a glyph representing myself, for instance, which is it's an old an ancient character, but it basically looks like a backwards. It looks like an F, but with the two the two horizontal things slanted down. So I've been using that as a symbol, representing myself when I go to, out in the woods or whenever I'm playing. So the other thing I do is I play the flute out in the woods. They love that. That's something we hadn't even brought up, was the aspect of music. And the music definitely creates the activity too. So, but I do try to interact with that and with the symbols and see if they change it. And sometimes they have. They actually came on my property one time, and they actually left a ground glyph for me, while we were camping somewhere else. And they came over, and the guy that was in my RV, he says, "Yeah, I got rowdy neighbors. Someone was hooing outside my window last night and started howling." And I got there the next day, and I looked on the ground, and there was my same symbol representing myself, and some other symbols that represented an asterisk, which was a symbol of universal. Have you ever seen the star pattern? Was placed next to my personal glyph, and that was actually in my yard. Yep.
Have they ever left anything for you besides?
Oh,
that?
Yes. I was actually building, a couple of years ago, I was building a greenhouse on my property, and, it was a long project, something I probably would never do again. It was a full construction project, and they must have been observing me do it, and they wanted to be helpful. And I went to bed one night and woke up, and the next morning, around the tree in the front of my yard, there was a carefully laid out all around the tree little pieces of 2x4 that were little cut pieces that, I don't even know where they came from. They wasn't from anything I was doing. Different pieces of construction material that they somehow acquired and carefully laid around the tree in a pattern. That was pretty, and I took a picture of that too. And
really?
Yes, and they also left a root wad, which was a dry piece of wood that that obviously I walked out one day and it was dry, and it's usually wet where we're at, it'd been raining, but this thing was a dry piece of wood. And I said, where the heck did this come from? It was almost petrified, and it just out of the blue, and I figured that they left that for me too. So
they were pretty much monitoring you from a distance of what you were building.
Yeah, well, they knew where I lived. They got my number. They actually came on my property a couple of times, and one of them was the adult. I think was there's a stretch of woods behind along my property, and there's a neighbor across the way, and obviously his window was open and the TV was on. So I looked over there and kept seeing red eyes shine, and they kept looking back and forth, and I couldn't see the body, but could see these big glowing reddish gold eyes that kept looking back at me and then looking back toward the TV. And I got close, it was dark, and I said, "What are you guys doing over there?" And I said, "Why don't you come on over here?" I shouldn't have said that, and I wasn't really ready for it, and then all of a sudden I see these massive two eyes turn and then start heading toward my direction. Well, the closer they got to me, then it started becoming apparent that the two red eyes were getting further and further apart, indicating how massive the head was, and it was looking down at me. So he got to a certain point, and I said, I have to go. I can't do this. I'm not ready for this kind of meeting yet. So I could kick myself, but they did come on my property 3 different occasions to visit.
I know the feeling of kicking yourself in a situation like that. I had the same situation, albeit with extraterrestrials in 2014, and to this day, I kick myself in the ass that when they invited us over, that I didn't go. I was too scared. And
well, they're waiting. They got my number, and the other thing too is I've had 3 separate sightings of the 2 of them specifically of UFOs that I've seen that have been close by, and one monitoring me here in Tacoma, a sphere right above the house. I looked up, and the sphere just kind of casually made its way behind the cloud, but it was right above my property. And then another time was a cylinder type, not a cylinder, but the typical type of saucer shaped with 3 round things underneath it was in the town of Enumclaw as I was driving, and it was suspended in the air about 100 and so feet above. Nobody was looking at it, and I couldn't figure out why I was the only one seeing it. But specifically to the portal I mentioned earlier, the whole UFO connection obviously is a big one that we didn't even touch on, because one of the things besides what happened at that portal was a picture I took as I went through that area a year later and turned around and took a picture, and lo and behold, there were 2 beings standing there. One looked like a Bigfoot. It was not as clear in the picture. The other one was pretty apparent. It was an ET. It was an ET. It looked very feminine, so I was imagining some kind of ET female was actually taken aback by the fact that I turned around and took a picture, because you could see the surprised expression on her face, and then the younger one that was pointing at me like that wasn't supposed to happen. So, I believe people are coming and going from that little spot there. And so I have a picture of that, too. That's also on my site.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, go ahead.
I want to get back to just a moment here about the whole gifting idea, whether or not you've gifted back. My researcher here at Space Out Radio, his name is Mike Schmidt, and he is a hunter. He hunts for food, and he hunts on this private piece of property where there's an old cabin in the back. And at first I thought this was a paranormal experience, but after talking about gifting and everything like that, I think it's a little bit more. So Mike's out hunting one day, and all of a sudden he hears this, hello, hello, very much in his area. Now, he's on private property. There is absolutely nobody there. It scared him. And if you looked at Mike, he's like 5'11", 260. This guy is just intimidating as hell because he's so stocky and strong. And so he immediately left the area. And he comes back, tells me the situation. I said, well, make an offering, so that way they know you're coming in peace. And once again, I thought it was paranormal. However, what turned my ties on it, and my opinion on it, was I told him, I said, if this is the old camper or logger or miner who used to live in this cabin, I said, what we really need to do here is make an offering. I said, bring a can of beer with you. Show them how to open it up, explain how to open it, how to crack the top, and let's see what happens. So he didn't believe me that anything would happen. Nobody goes on that property. He goes and finds a spot. He puts it privately. Well, he goes back, I think 2 days later, and the can is gone. And from where he put the can, he actually raked up around the bottom on the ground, so that way he could see if it was human or not, that anybody went and maybe put and stepped in there, right? There was no footprints. But on the ground there were 3 pieces of quartz in a triangle, with a piece of quartz sitting right in the middle standing up. And was this after the beer can was taken? Yeah, 2 days later, the beer can is completely gone, and there is now 3 pieces of quartz in a triangle, like almost like a, they weren't formed in a triangle, but shaped like a triangle. Like one's pointing north, the other one's pointing southwest, the other one's pointing southeast, and then right in the middle is the one standing straight up. And to me, that is a total gifting of a Sasquatch coming back. And believe it or not, Mike since then has had the telepathic communication with Sasquatch.
Right. Well, that's what I figured that would be the gifting. It was a response back to show it was like an acknowledgement gift that they appreciated what was provided them. So. And that probably opened the link for, like you said, with the telecommunication. it opened the link for a telepathic connection with them.
Yeah, I fully agree in regards to that. But here's the other thing. When Mike, a few weeks later, we found the footprints, and then a few weeks after that, Mike was out looking for footprints in the forest, and he's driving along, comes across a young conservation officer up here that he knows, and it's the middle of hunting season, so the conservation officers are absolutely anywhere and everywhere on the local trails here. And they start striking up a conversation. The conservation officer goes up to him and says, well, what are you doing here? And Mike says, well, I'm actually out looking for footprints. And conservation officer's like, well, what kind? And he says, well, actually, I'm looking for Sasquatch. Now, this is what really intrigued me, and this gets back to the whole government side of things. And I should have told you this earlier while we were on topic, but it blew my mind at that point just listening to you. But the conservation officer basically said, look, I can't confirm or deny. We're not even allowed to talk about it. He goes, I've seen some strange things in this forest, and if I talk about it, I'm going to lose my job. They don't want us talking about the strange things we are seeing in the forest.
I've heard that so many times. You're not the first one where I've heard this story over and over again.
Like, I don't understand the mental capacity behind that type of direction. I really don't. I'm lost at that. Now, the gentleman did say, hey, if I hear of anything or any areas with hot spots, I will get a hold of you. But, like, Mike's keeping this source tight, which I have told him to do. I don't even know the gentleman's name. Wouldn't even know him if I saw him and he was standing right beside me right now.
Right. Well, I personally don't have the tendency to want to report this to any kind of authority whatsoever if I was in connection with the Sasquatch. So, yeah, the whole thing with the forestry department, I've heard this also with the 411, missing 411, and I think I've heard Politis, for instance, talking about that. I heard him speak the other at a different conference and alluding to some of this, not wanting to report. Like the frustration of trying to find out why people are missing or some of the things related to what we're talking about, and then having, that anytime there's reports of something like that, they downplay it. They don't have nothing to do with it. So they look the other way. And why? Why are they looking the other way or not reporting them or not bringing it to public mind what's going on? Regardless of what it is. The strange thing, why don't they want to report things out, woods that are strange? And your guess is as good as mine. Maybe it is a bureaucratic thing. It could be as simple as that, I don't want to lose my job because I don't want to come across as being crazy. But then again, it could be some higher directive that's telling them, says, we want, anything that meets this criteria that you find, keep your mouth shut. It says, we're not reporting it. And it could be some ulterior motive behind that. I don't know.
I still find it strange. And I'd like to meet the man one day. But who knows if we'll get the opportunity. I have a question from our Twitter feed at #SpacedOutRadio from John, and he is asking, Samantha, have you ever heard anything that Bigfoot has touched or chewed, has it ever been DNA tested? Do we know that?
Yes, there has been. That's kind of a touchy subject too. That borders on this whole authority thing. Is whenever samples have been tested by other means, they come back and say, "Well, that's it's just bear or whatever," and because they don't have any they're basing their DNA test on existing things that they have been able to categorize, whether it's human, animal, or anything like that. So if they did come across some DNA that is unknown or uncategorized, they're going to come back and make an assumption. and never really say that this is an unknown species and things. So there is some of the same kind of what I consider cover up going on in that area. I do know of one person who's I believe a doctor that has done some of the testing with DNA, but the problem is anytime someone's doing that, they're attacked. This is not legitimate, and this is what you run into all the time. Every time you have any kind of credible evidence, there seems to be this backlash or attack on everything's a hoax, and this is something we face all the time as researchers. And but the one legitimate DNA test that was done indicated that we shared the same mitochondrial DNA, which is the mother's side. I mean, not the mother's side, but just we share common ancestry with them, at least half of it.
So getting back to the whole extraterrestrial side here, Samantha, what, in your opinion, is the ET connection?
Oh, well, every time you start getting involved with the, like in my case, it starts out with just a physical experience. It's just like, it just escalates into something else. I never had the kind of experience. Once I started experiencing and seeing the Sasquatch, then all of a sudden it led into the strangeness. The strange, the whole portal orb thing, and then the UFOs that was seen several times. I think there's a connection with them, and that they are working in concert with extraterrestrials. At least some of them are, or at least the group is. That there is a connection, and I know that for a fact because I feel that the clan that lives close by that portal are being visited regularly by other that are being visited by extraterrestrials that come there and check on them, or they go off together and take care of things. I don't know. There's a connection there, and God, we excuse me. I mean, we've had a lot of issues with. A lot of sightings rather of UFOs just in our area alone. Mount Rainier was the original where the term flying saucer came from, was Mount Rainier. That's where the term came from the one that spotted it back in the day. What about in the 1940s or whatever? So, I wish I had an answer beyond that. But I've seen so many strange things, and the only other thing that topped everything else I saw was I met a strange individual in the woods, and who had the ability to point at a star, a light in the sky, which I thought was a star, and concentrate, and actually would move his finger, and actually this light would actually move with it. In other words, the direct manipulation of UFO that I witnessed directly, and that probably was the most awe-inspiring thing I've ever saw in my life. Now, I don't know if I don't know who I'm dealing with the individual that, he had some telekinetic capabilities, obviously. But things get stranger and stranger out here, and I'm still trying to piece it all together. And that's one of the reasons I stay out here, because it's like this mystery novel. You get all these different clues together, and then you're trying to see how they're all tied together, but they're sure coming together close, and they seem to be accelerating. I mean, my experiences in so many different things, it's one thing if a person only experiences a couple of things or two or three things, like, I just had a Sasquatch sighting, that was it. But I'm having these regular experiences, and they're increasing. So more to tell later. I'm hoping right now we're all snowed in over here, but come springtime, we're going to be experiencing a whole lot more stuff up here. I'll tell you that right now. So,
when do you find them more active?
personally, probably different ones would say different things. I found that there's more activity in the summertime, and I found a great deal of interaction going on in the August, September time frame. For some reason, July, August, September seemed to be a really big one, at least in that area where I was at, in the time we were camping out. Probably because the weather's ideal and they're there. I don't know. Right now, it's kind of, with the massive amount of snow on the ground and everything, it's very, they're still there, but in smaller numbers. Where they go, I don't know. So,
do you think then that maybe that's just a lead up where they're trying to garner their strength, trying to garner the attention? Maybe it's breeding season. Maybe they're prepping for hibernation, so they're a little bit more active.
Possibly. I know that there's probably a hibernation of sorts, and I have a feeling that there's underground caverns nearby. I do feel that they do that living underground is probably a big possibility. That's where they go.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. So do you think then that they are living in caves? Are they underground dwellers, maybe living in old mine shafts? Do they set up their own huts that are maybe in areas that are not visible or that humans don't have the ability to get to? What do you think their lifestyle is?
Oh, I have a feeling like certain nesting areas, at least with the younger ones, that or like these huge stumps that have been logged long ago, and they're huge, and they provide and they get like erosion underneath the roots, and so there's almost this huge space underneath these log areas. One time we found a log that was hewn out in the middle, and would never known it, but it was like a little bitty, like a residence or something like that. I mean, it looked like a big, like a living room area or something. That's how large it was, and would never know it was there until we actually took a camera and took a picture underneath there and could see it was a huge living. I mean, it was a huge area that Sasquatch could actually be in, at least the younger one. So I think they have their hiding spots during the daytime that the younger ones access, and the older ones they blend in. They take advantage of wood, especially like trees that are falling and things like that. They love areas where they create these blinds and things like that, where the trees are pulled down and they make structures out of them and things like that. So anything where they can keep humans out because it makes it such a barrier, that's more likely to where they're staying,
They really are a beautiful creature to look at, aren't they?
Yep, the ones I had taken pictures of and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I wish a lot of people actually had that opportunity to get out in the bush and have an experience to just seeing one without the intimidation, without the size factor. And that's hard to do when you see something for the first time that you really haven't had the ability to see before. But it really is a good-looking creature. I don't know how to explain it. It's just an amazing looking creature.
I'm not intimidated anymore if I saw them. No, I see the gentleness in them, and I know they're huge, especially when they're adults and things like that. And they, but I've gotten used to what they look like, at least on photos or pictures or what I've seen. So to actually see one, it wouldn't intimidate me at all anymore.
How long did it take you to get over that intimidation?
Oh God, I'm going to say, well, at least up till now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've been gearing up for my next encounters and things like that as the spring rolls around. So I have this inkling that there's going to be more involvement because I do try to encourage them to come closer, and I think that's a real possibility every year that goes by. So
we only got about 3.5 minutes left here with you tonight, Samantha, and I want to say thank you for being on the show. For people who, and I know there's people listening in right now who maybe think they've seen the signs or they've seen anything, maybe they live on the outskirts of town or up in the mountains. What signs could they be looking for, in your opinion, for the Sasquatch?
Go to a wooded area where it's where there's the possibility that it extends off into into the mountains or something, or just a small wooded area. Look for evidence of tree structures or structures where it looks like things are done in geometric patterns, where the logs are pulled up or put in like X's or the A structures, things like that. And go out there and encourage them to come in closer by playing the flute. You could probably do a very small gifting area, but I've been very successful with music. Just do the normal human thing, show respect for the forest. They see that. Don't try to pollute or make a lot of noise, but, just sit there and if you can play a flute, great. If you have some music you have recorded you want to play that's soft, they love that, and that draws them in a lot. So you got to be patient. It takes time. It takes time for that trust to build up, so that's the one thing that I had to be extremely patient. It's taken me 2 or 3 years, and I've been going out all the time on a regular basis. A lot of times I don't have those interactions. I don't have nothing going on, but when they do happen, it's spectacular. So you just got to look at it that way. It's a long-term commitment.
And is it that feeling that you'll know when they are watching you, or you'll know when they are around? Because a lot of people are curious about that as well.
Yeah, you'll pick up on that. You just got to have also, here's the most important thing. You have to have the right attitude. You're out there not chasing them or anything like that. You're out there to have a relationship with the Sasquatch. You got to keep putting that intention in your mind. You're there to make a heartfelt connection with them, and that they will pick up on that.
What about making offerings?
You could do that too, which is, like you said, making a offering or a gifting of some kind of thing, and then putting that intention out there to them. This is for them, and seeing what they do give back in return. Every person is different. Yeah.
And the only reason why I say offerings is a lot of First Nations believe that if you're going out in the forest, it is a good idea to bring tobacco. It's a good idea to bring sage, maybe some berries or dandelions or something along those lines. It's kind of like a peace offering. Would you say that's fair advice?
I would say so. There's some of the things that I will be doing other than what we used to gift. I would rather bring them something that they probably relate to a lot better, and I have been looking more at the Indian ways of handling this.
Samantha Ritchie, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Please take a couple of seconds here to break down your website, your YouTube channel, so that way our audience can get more information from you.
Okay, great. Well, my main website is planetsasquatch.com. That takes you to the blog, and if you want to go on to YouTube, just search for Planet Sasquatch, and the first channel that shows up. I also have a Facebook group, which you can just search for, called Planet Sasquatch. So the key word is Planet Sasquatch for everything you're looking for.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to get you to hold on for a moment here, Samantha. I'm going to wrap this thing up. If you're listening on the Spaced Out Radio side, you are hearing Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Yes, Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. He brings us in and takes us out of every single episode, 7 nights a week. Tomorrow night on the show, Rob Morphy will join us. We're going to get the crypto historian here for his last appearance of 2016. You know, we always bring some great stories along. Remember, if you want to listen to any of Spaced Out Radio's archives, go to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn, or if you have an iTunes account, you can also go to Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. Download what you need. I know Mike Morin from the Canadian Paranormal Society loves that. You know, that's the way we do it. We're trying to get that name out here. Do me a favor, listeners. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend. We are growing every day. I see the responses on social media. And if you're on LinkedIn, give us a connection. Give us an endorsement. We're going hard on LinkedIn right now as well. So make sure you take care of us there. We'll take care of you. We'll bring you the good topics every single night. And on that note, I'm signing off. I'm out of here. I'll talk to you in 21 hours from now. Have a good one.